Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to reintroduce to you now. Rachel Frase is a returning guest on our show. Be sure to check out her first appearance on episode 767 of our podcast, recorded with Dr. Lori Calabrase. Rachel Frase is a practicing registered dietitian in Connecticut with 13 years of experience. She began her career working as a clinical dietitian in the traditional healthcare model and has spent the last 8 years actively working with patients to prevent and reverse chronic metabolic conditions. She spent several years in the field of medical weight loss, guiding patients with nutritional and lifestyle changes to support and maintain weight loss, as well as improve metabolic markers, and has spent the last couple of years using her tailored ketogenic diets in a metabolic psychiatry practice. Her own journey with her GI issues that could not be resolved by traditional medicine led her down the rabbit holes of diet and lifestyle as she was determined to get her health and quality of life back. It led her to peel back the layers of what true human nutrition really is and how it heals. She enjoys living an active lifestyle and getting outdoors as much as possible. She participates in a variety of activities, currently including running in a club called the Run 169 Town Society, where the goal is to run a race in every town in Connecticut. That is super cool. Open water swimming and hiking with her husband at national park sites. Excuse me. Rachel Frase, would be so honored as to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Hey, Casey. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back on. Really excited to have another conversation with you.
I am as well. It was great to have you on before. Like we said in the introduction, we had you on with Dr. Lori Calabrase, which we both totally love and admire, and she does amazing work. But even in that episode, we wanted to make sure that we got you back on to go in a little bit more detail in your own story and hear kind of your side of things. I think it's fascinating to talk to registered dietitians who are trained in the more traditional way and decide to break out and are able to break out of that system, which you have to some extent. Before we get into that, I do just have to ask you, tell us about this run club that you belong to. That sounds absolutely amazing.
Yes, it is. It's up to about between 5,000 and 6,000, I think, runners in Connecticut. It's really grown over the years. And it was started by people with a small group of people with a mission, a fun mission to literally run any race in Connecticut with the minimum distance of 1 mile. So minimum distance of 1 mile could be marathon, ultra marathon. It could be the running leg of a triathlon. Like really no limitations on what type of race it is, just minimum of 1 mile. And the only town that counts is the town that it starts in. So you can't like run a race through multiple towns and get multiple towns that way. But it's just a group of people that love running and love Connecticut, love seeing different places, and the community is the best part of it. So everyone cheers for each other, gets to know each other. It's just a great, I think, place to have human connection and also, of course, get your physical activity, run. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I've never been to the Northeast. And is it true? So does Connecticut only have 169 towns?
Yes, that is the number. Sorry if I missed that. The number of towns in Connecticut is 169 towns.
Wow. Okay, awesome. And so how long does it take? Yeah, how long does it take somebody to be able to do that? Is it like a rolling thing where it's like organized, like every Saturday you start one place and then the next Saturday you run another? Like how do they set that up?
So it's completely individual, and you use the races that are already set up. Now, if some towns don't have races, which happens, you can get like some members will actually organize races or work with local like schools, PTOs, like to organize races in those towns that don't have races. But you basically have to register for a race, an official race that's timed in those towns, and everyone does it at their own pace. It could be a short. I don't know what the shortest is. It'd be really interesting to know. Maybe only 1 year to 2 years is the shortest someone's ever done it. But the limitations are overlap. So a lot of towns will have the race on the same day. So like, can you get to this town and and then a couple hours later get to another town? And then certain towns only have one race a year or one race every 2 years or 3 years. So a lot of people it takes 5+ years, 5 to 10 years. But those people that are willing to drive and like make it work with their schedule can do it in a shorter period of time.
Well, it sounds super fun. Like you said, like a great way to check out the state in different locations. And yeah, it almost doesn't matter how long it takes somebody if you're appreciating that community and the camaraderie of doing that with all the other people. So I think that's super cool.
Yes. And on that note, many people will do round 2 and round 3 and like keep going because they want to stay in the club and they'll just keep repeating towns, doing different races.
That totally doesn't surprise me. I love that. And then we mentioned national parks in the introduction as well. What are some standout hikes that you've done in different national parks?
Oh man, that's such a tough question because there's so many good ones. Um, Man, of course, I'm thinking Zion, Observation Point, Rockies. Can't think of the exact like names of the trails, but a bunch of great hikes in the Rocky Mountains. Um, Utah, where you are, obviously those five national parks were beautiful. We hit all of those. I
Wow.
think Capitol Reef was the most outstanding to me. It was
Wow.
just so, yeah, so unique, so different in terms of the rock formations and just feeling like you're in the elevation, just feeling like almost you're on a different planet. I just thought it was um, just a really wonderful experience. So
Wow, super cool. Yeah, it's that all of our national parks in Utah are close as the bird flies, but to actually get to them, they're not that close. Like some of them are significant drives that you've got to go way out of your way to be able to get to. You mentioned Capitol Reef. Are you sure you're not thinking Bryce with the elevation? Bryce is probably the one with the highest elevation that has those weird hoodoos, or did you really love Capitol Reef the most?
I really loved Capitol Reef.
Cool. Wow.
So Bryce was amazing. We only got half a day there because it was close to Memorial Day weekend, but so we didn't have snow gear or anything like that. And we got there the first half a day, awesome weather, woke up to whiteout snow conditions, no visibility. And so we like only got half a day in Bryce, but it was still beautiful. We have to go back. But Capitol Reef, we got to spend a little more time. And maybe the elevation itself maybe isn't the best way to describe it, but just feeling like you're so high and above everything else, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Like you just can't
Well said.
see beyond the park.
Yeah,
So
well said. It's funny. Capitol Reef is like our forgotten national park. Like it is by far the least attended out of all of them, which is nice if you know that where to go in the park is absolutely amazing, and it's not going to be as crowded. We did a trip to Zion, which is another funny thing, by the way. If you're a local, you call it Zion. If you're from out of state, you call it Zion. That's how we're always able to distinguish who's the locals and who isn't. But like we got there super early every single day, and by the time we were leaving the park, like people had been looking for a parking place for like hours at the visitor center, and you got to get into buses, and like it's cool because you see the most amazing things, but everybody wants to go see those amazing things, so the park is absolutely just slam crowded. Do you remember any of the hikes you did? Like did you do any of the narrows or do Angel's Landing or anything while you were there that you recall?
we didn't. Angel's Landing was closed. The subway was on our list and it was flooded, and we just like we didn't end up doing it. So
Okay.
definitely going to go back to Zion and Bryce, but we had 3 days in Zion, so we did a lot of like the smaller hikes and got to see a lot of the park. So it was
Gotcha.
still. I just thought of something else we went to in Zion. It's like 30 minutes away, but it's a part of Zion. The Collab
Kolob.
Canyons and
Kolob. Yeah. Yeah.
The Collab
Yeah.
Plateau. That was also beautiful too,
Yeah.
and
It's just
quiet, like much quieter than the main park.
Yeah, very quiet. So many of the like towns and names of stuff around here have like very heavy Mormon references, and so Kolob is one of those things that is a kind of a Mormon word, if you will. And it's even like the town outside of Zion is called Hurricane, even though it's spelled hurricane. The way you actually say it is hurricane because one of the Mormon prophets said it really fast like that, and so that's the name of the town, even though it's spelled hurricane. So there's a lot of weird things like that, but it is absolutely beautiful. And you mentioned the two hikes that I ended up making it on this last year. We did the subway, which was incredible. And we had permits to do Angel's Landing. I made it up halfway and figured that was good enough. But being like literally hanging out on chains and like nothing below you but like 1,000 foot, 2,000 foot sheer cliff was definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies. So I'm proud that I made it as far as I did, but I didn't do the entire thing. It was pretty gnarly for sure.
That's what I've heard from those that have done it. Yes.
Yeah,
And like
yeah,
depending on what time of year you go, like the heat is just you're totally exposed and it's really just
totally.
like yeah,
Yeah, quite the
tough on the
experience for
body.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite the experience. Well, thank you for sharing that. I always find it interesting. And as we say always on this podcast, we're really just kidding about Utah. It's not that great. Colorado's much better. Go there. Lots of great stuff in the Rockies, like you said. We're getting too busy right here. Okay, so tell us about your story as far as becoming interested in health and in particular interested in nutrition. When did you know that's something you wanted to do, and what was your schooling like to be able to do that?
Great question. That was tied. So it was literally tied to my like personal experience with my gut health. When I went to college, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do. Like most people, a lot of people, I mean, don't know exactly what we want to do. And I just sort of like, these were the days when we had the catalog, like the physical catalog. The courses weren't online, right? Yeah, totally, completely. So I had the physical catalog, and I like was like going through the pages, and I saw a nutrition class, and I was like, well, that sounds really interesting. Let me take a nutrition course. So I took a nutrition course, and literally that semester, my gut health turned from I had IBS, or was diagnosed with IBS, right? Which we know is a cluster of symptoms. If you fall into these categories, you get put into this diagnosis of IBS. And it had been like okay, right? Like it wasn't great. My gut function wasn't great, bloating, some constipation, but it wasn't like totally derailing my quality of life. It hadn't taken over. But that semester, as I was taking my first nutrition course, it declined. My gut health and gut function declined significantly. So much that I actually lost 40 pounds through that semester, which was crazy. And I was definitely
Wow.
having some malabsorption. Yeah, I was definitely malabsorbing nutrients. The constipation became really severe. The bloating became really severe. I had a stomach pain with almost everything I ate. So it was like impossible to figure out like what was the problem, because it was like every time I ate, my stomach hurt. So this progressed as I was, in my first nutrition course. And I think that helped me. I mean, maybe I would have always loved nutrition, but now here I am like, okay, I have to be a detective. Like I have to figure this out. Here I'm taking these courses. I'm going to keep taking these courses and learn more about nutrition and learn what I can do, because the medications I was given, like the symptom management things, weren't really touching my symptoms, and my health was worsening. And with that, I think you might have mentioned you had gut issues the last time we were on the podcast as well. When your gut function really declines, and of course it affects your immune system, but like your sleep quality. And if your stomach's always bothering you, you're on edge. You have like this nerve, this like just nervy edginess, because it's like always like gnawing at you, a burning sensation. So my quality of life in general was taking such a hit, and it really fueled my passion to figure this out and learn as much as I could. And so I love that first, nutrition 101 foundational course I took, and kept going. Um, and I'm going to stop there so you can remind me. I know this was like a multi-part question, but that's how I first like got into nutrition, took my first class, and basically I was on a mission to figure out what was going on with my gut health and how I could fix it.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. To be fair, if I did mention that I had gut issues, they would be very minor. I never dealt with anything that was like I was never diagnosed with anything. I've never taken medications for that. So if I did say that, it was very, very minor. But I've talked to
Yeah.
enough people on our show that have dealt with them, and it sounds absolutely miserable. Like people like planning out your entire day around where the bathroom is, carrying toilet paper with you, like all that stuff is crazy. But going back to your story, when you said you lost 40 pounds, I only know the version of you that I know now that was already like incredibly lean as far as what you look like. Were you overweight at the time, or did you not have the 40 pounds to lose?
Didn't have the 40 pounds to lose.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
Yeah, I was between 155 and 160, and I got down to 118. It was my lowest that I saw on the scale, and it scared me to death.
Yeah, that would be pretty
So,
miserable. Yeah. As you were taking these first classes and kind of learning about nutrition, what was your own personal nutrition like back then?
so it was regular, I guess you would say. My mother was a nurse, and she always tried to eat, get us to eat healthy and a balanced diet. So we always had our meat and our protein, and there was a starch and there was a vegetable. So it was kind of an average, like American balanced diet at the time. And then of
Gotcha.
course it changed after that. But actually I should give you context. I definitely was higher carb, because that semester I was on the crew team, so I wanted to be a part of a team. I've always been athletic and always wanted to be involved in sports, so I decided they were recruiting, so I tried out, made the team. So I was definitely higher carb, like granola bars, just because that was what I knew, and what I knew at the time, what I had available. So that the higher carb, higher sugar, I think was probably fueling my gut issues. I think it was part of the speedometer, and then like why all of a sudden it accelerated, and also the exercise. If you're doing weight training, intense short burst exercise, you're also elevating your glucose. That could have had, and of course I was eating a lot of carbohydrates, but it could have been those two things and the stress of exercise. So
Yeah, I've
I think it
done,
was multifactorial.
yeah, I've done competitive cycling and played ice hockey in college and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And from what I've heard, that does not touch the kind of intensity that people that do crew I get to all the time. I've heard that is really, really, really intense, quite difficult. So, yeah, I think all of those would play factors for sure. And was there anything that you were learning in your classes that whether they were correct or incorrect, was there anything that you were told that would help with gut issues, make things a little bit better? Anything along those lines?
Main things I picked out at the time were reducing or eliminating gluten, and then I took it a next step further to all grains and dairy, processed dairy. So those were the couple things that I was able to like gauge out of my courses.
Gotcha. So that was actually taught to you that would actually help with gut issues?
No, that's a good question. Whether it was directly taught to me or I read it on my own, I can't like recall at this moment in time, but I had the I think the education or the interest to either pick it out, put two and two together, but I could have read something externally as well.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question is it's
Mhm.
so often and frequent that you hear somebody goes through a program and even a really good program and they never learn that kind of thing, or they never put the connections together that your gut issues can be caused by the food that you're eating, which once you're on the other side, of course, that makes perfect sense. But I'm stunned to see how many people take courses like that and never get taught the food impacts like directly where the food is going. Like you would think that would be taught a little bit more. So yeah, that's kind of why I
Right.
asked. Yeah.
Right. No, totally. I mean, I definitely learned about gluten intolerances, but the dairy part I'm probably picked that up on my own because I can't remember a course specifically that went into that because most of the courses, you know, said to have three recommended, like we learned that the recommendation to have 3 servings of low fat dairy a day and that sort of thing. So the gluten, yes, the dairy, probably not.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. They would have either been very progressive or, getting to know you from our last interview. I know how scientifically minded you are and how deep you like to go to find interesting answers to questions. So either way, yeah, I appreciate that. Can you tell us a little about your experience with the medications? You told us that the medications were there for the symptoms. Did they seem to help? How many different medications did you take, and did you experience side effects?
No side effects. Um, just um, I remember Miralax, and there was a couple others like for shorter periods of time, but Miralax is the only one that I recommend. I mean, I remember having to take, and no, it didn't help at all. So it was so the main issue was the severe constipation, severe bloating, abdominal pain. Um, the main medication was that, and it didn't help it at all. So I kind of moved on for that, and then used like over the counter things as needed, right, to help things move along because my gut just wasn't functioning.
Got it. But it was slightly better from avoiding the gluten and the dairy.
Yes. So once I took the gluten and dairy out, and then further took out grains after that, I regained the weight. Like things, the abdominal pain, like the pain with eating, became much much better. Right, that burning sensation, the pressure. So that made a huge difference, and I was able to regain weight, kind of get a lot of my quality of life back over the next several years.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And then registered dietitian is typically 6 years in college. Is that correct?
So before we jump to that, actually, I just want to I was just thinking of something else related to. There was a couple of things I wanted to say related to um, the the gut history. One, which we can circle back to if you want to. One was why I think this like severe gut dysbiosis, my microbiome dysbiosis happened, because that's what happened, right? Like my gut microbiome was just totally out of balance, and the functioning really deteriorated. So I just want to make sure we circle back to that. And then I lost the other
Let's do
thing
for sure.
that I was thinking of. Oh, that there's sort of like a part two to this story too. So that got me to a level of quality of life, but it wasn't till I took out all carbs and sugar completely that I was able to fully like get back to normal bowel function, normal gut function, totally normal health.
Gotcha. Okay. Where is that in the time frame? That wasn't while you were still in school, right? You were already practicing as a dietitian at the time?
So it was actually while I was practicing as a dietitian. I had just finished the internship, just got my first job. Um, Back then, the bachelor's degree, and then I do my master's degree, but it was separated. Now it's together,
Right.
so we can circle back to the education piece. But I did finish my internship, and things had started to. I was working as a dietitian, and things had started to like get a little bit worse. And I knew that there had to be like another level to this, and I was able to figure out that a lot of it was due to antibiotics that I had when I was younger. So I had a ton of antibiotics within the first 18 months of life. I had 13 rounds of antibiotics.
Wow.
And our gut microbiome, it actually takes 3 years. Did you know this? It takes 3 years for a gut microbiome to build in an infant. We're born with a sterile gut, no bacterial microorganisms in there.
I had never
So
considered that, but it makes perfect sense.
right. And so I learned this like along the way, and I thought, wow, like it takes 3 years. You're building up your gut, right? You're literally building up your microbiome. If you're insulting it with antibiotics one after the other, can it really like establish the population that it's supposed to establish? So I had all those antibiotics, and then of course that definitely affected my immune system. I got sick a ton as a kid, so like strep throat, sinus infections, ended up getting Lyme disease a couple times, and so more antibiotics, more antibiotics, more antibiotics. So I think the amount of antibiotics through infancy, through childhood, through adolescence is what sort of led, besides those other factors I was mentioning, led to this severe gut dysbiosis, right? That imbalance, and then malabsorption. And so that's when that next level of basically a ketogenic diet, even though I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time, taking out all carbohydrates, all sugars, fruits, right, everything, really helped my gut to fully heal and get to that next level of okay, like this is how everything should be.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So we're definitely going to get there. I do want to know what your practice was like when you first got started. What was that first job, especially with the training that you had received in school? What were you doing in that first job? Were you in the hospital setting? And what kind of success were you seeing by following what you were trained in?
So I worked, let's see, my first job, I had a couple part-time jobs. One was working for a naturopathic doctor, which was super helpful because he did things very differently. And he actually helped me to figure things out and change my diet. And I did use supplements at the time and probiotics to help things heal a little bit quicker. And then I had a traditional job in um, short-term care, long-term rehab. So basically a skilled nursing facility where I was doing typical dietitian work within the dietary guidelines, right? Nothing outside of that yet at this point. And then I stayed on to do my master's and was teaching. So I got to teach graduate classes and help interns, or basically it's called precepting interns. And that was great because I got to teach them the wellness, like health side of things, and actually work one-on-one with patients in a more individual way. So I sort of had like these three different aspects that came together.
Gotcha. When you're working with a patient, again, back then, what were you doing? Like, are you feeding these people, like actually getting them the food from the cafeteria, or are you talking to them? Are you giving them meal plans? Like, what does your actual work look like back then?
So not actually giving them the meals, but choosing the diet. And of course, the diets are limited to what the facility offers, right? So a diabetic diet has all the typical sugar-free stuff and the 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrates per day, because that's what the recommendation is, or not per day, per meal,
Per
sorry.
meal.
30
Got
to
it.
45 grams of carbohydrates per meal. The sugar-free stuff, a lot of lower fat stuff. So those menus are really controlled by dietitians oversee the menus, but they're controlled by the kitchen manager, who's controlled by the budget, and of course controlled by the diets, the dietary guidelines, basically the USDA dietary guidelines for healthy Americans that sort of control the different institutional food systems. So not a lot, really able to change the food too much. I can individualize, like if someone has food preferences, I can change things out. I can sort of make little changes, but in that sort of period of my life, it was very inside the box, able to individualize a little bit where I could, but really not able to go outside the menu that was planned and the guidelines that it was following.
Okay, so we've already mentioned this in this conversation that you're very scientifically minded, and I seem to recall in our first conversation that you did learn human biology. Like they did teach you the way things work.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of like cognitive dissonance of like, well, I've learned this about what type 2 diabetes is, but then we're also giving them this many carbohydrates per meal. Like when did that start to occur to you that like does this make sense?
Mm. It didn't right away. I didn't right away, I think because I was just maybe doing my job.
Right.
Or, yeah, just doing my job. I know some dietitians, I think it did hit them right away. And then others, of course, like are still practicing that way. So I guess there's a big variety there. I think it wasn't until after just my personal health journey and seeing what I went through and what I was able to learn about food through that. And then definitely my first job in, we'll call it the field of metabolic health, or it was particularly a medical weight loss practice where they were using lower carb ketogenic diets in the prevention and reversal of obesity, type 2 diabetes. We also worked with patients with type 1 diabetes to get their diabetes under better control, to lose weight. So that job really, like I got into that job and it was like, wow, yes, like this is what I know how to do. And it all sort of clicked.
Yeah, wow, that would be a totally different job experience and job satisfaction between those two things. Let's jump back to your own personal health journey and the time that, what was it like to hear about a ketogenic diet? Did you learn anything about ketogenic diets when you were in school? Had you heard about it on the cover of a magazine at the supermarket? How did you first learn about it? And what did you think when you first heard what the diet actually was?
So I first heard about it actually in college, but it was one day out of like one class, right? Out of one course, out of the whole thing. So just this one little instance, but I'll mention it because it was really impactful and I remembered it. It was a professor in a course called Nutrition Through the Life Cycles. And she had someone she knew come in to tell us about her journey with her son who had epilepsy. And the epilepsy was treatment resistant to medications, and she put him on a ketogenic diet. And so she told us his story and everything that she did. Like she would go to McDonald's and order the box and the toy and put together this high fat meal for him with hot dogs and butter, but he could get the same box as his friends and the same toys as friends. Like I remember these details from, oh my goodness, 18 years ago. I think I took that class. So it tells you how like impactful it was and how I remembered it and the impact of it. But I didn't, in terms of hearing the first word of ketogenic diet, I guess it was in that first job that I had working in the field of metabolic health. When I was changing my own diet, I did it for what I was, for my microbiome, right? For what I learned, what I read about gut dysbiosis and different overgrowths of bacteria. And I didn't come across the word ketogenic, which is just like really funny. I use my own education to say, well, if I'm eating less carbs, I need to eat more fat. So I increased the fat in my diet, kept the base of the animal protein that I already had there, and just cut the carbs. But it would definitely be in that first job I had is when I started using the word ketogenic and working with the diets with patients.
That experience at school is so interesting for two reasons to me. One is that it's a diet that's completely unconventional, like a woman talking about going to McDonald's and burger patties and hot dogs. Like that's probably the opposite of anything you learned was really healthy in the diet to begin with. But also, I think it's interesting to the fact that it had many thoughts that like diets can be so transformative. Any diet can be transformative for like really severe health conditions. It seems like a lot of the training for dietitians is more like weight control kinds of things and doesn't really make an impact on a lot of like chronic conditions. Did you seem to recall it was interesting for that reason as well?
Oh, definitely. Right. And a lot of it is looking at it through the lens of calories, right? When you say weight management, weight loss, like we're taught calories in, calories out, we're taught that sort of thing. And looking at all food is the same in a way, like there was definitely that sort of lens over it. But there's also that foundational teaching that you mentioned, like the science courses that I mentioned, right? Like we do take biochemistry and also nutritional biochemistry. So how macronutrients and micronutrients are processed and used in the body, and everything, anatomy, physiology, and chemistry, all those courses. So I think that for me, and I'd love to hear what other dietitians like experienced in their sort of like transformation over from, we'll say being a typical trained dietitian, I guess if that's the best way to put it, in terms of following the My Plate or the food pyramid, right? The 6 to 11 servings of grains per day, and lots of vegetables, lots of fruit, lower fat, only do a little red meat, like that sort of guidelines, how they transitioned over. I'd be interested to hear. For me, it wasn't, it didn't feel like a monumental shift from like one to the other. It didn't feel like, wow, this is like a crazy flip turn. It came a little bit more naturally to me because it all made sense. And I think it was that it all made sense in terms of what I learned about protein and fat. And I even wrote down a quote from one of my textbooks for you about saturated fat in the body, which I would love to read to you if you'd like me to. But
Please.
I think, sure, I'll jump in. I thought it was really interesting. I was thinking about saturated fat this morning and how I was thinking, was I taught that it was bad? Like, I'm trying to remember, right? It's been a long time. I know it's not bad for human health. I know it's healthy for human health. I know our body fat is composed of saturated fat and a combination, right, with some monounsaturated fat. And so I went looking and I found this great quote from the textbook. And I'll read it. It says, because fatty acids with double bonds are vulnerable to oxidative damage, humans and other warm-blooded organisms store fat predominantly as saturated palmitic acid and stearic fatty acids. And it's like, there it is. Like, it's one of many examples of things. We also learned like cholesterol is essential for the body. Humans manufacture cholesterol. So like all of these, we manufacture because it's essential, right? So all of these things are here. And I thought like, wow, like, how far of a stretches it for the mainstream healthcare provider, the mainstream dietitian, for us to be afraid of saturated fat when we know, like the science we've known for a long time, saturated fat is not only healthy for humans, it's the preferred storage form of fat because it's more stable and less likely to cause issues for us, less likely to cause oxidative damage and inflammation.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I love that you marked that down in your textbook. And I've got an example that I use sometimes, and I'll tell you in a second. You mentioned the dietitians that go through the transition, how they thought about things before versus how they think about things after, and how it wasn't like a very severe or completely different way for you to switch over. But that's the reason why I like to ask dietitians that question, because so few of you seemingly ever go through that transition. Like, it doesn't occur to most people. And like I said, the analogy that I will give is if you went to contractor school and you learned how to be a contractor, this is how you build a house. You start by pouring a footing, and then you build a foundation, and then you put in the ceiling and do all the framing and all this stuff, and it goes in this order. So then you go out into the world and open your own business, and you start building houses by starting with the roof, and then you build a bathroom, and then later on down the road you might build a foundation. Like, it's like we learn about this in biology, but then go out and do this other thing, which is like completely opposite. That's why I asked you, like, did you have cognitive dissonance of like, okay, this textbook says saturated fat is not bad and the body has lots of uses for it, and don't eat saturated fat because you're going to die of a heart attack and cholesterol is going to kill you or whatever. Like, it's such an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, I agree with you, but it is just so weird that you're taught one thing in the textbook and then told to do something different in practice.
It is, and I can see why many people would have cognitive dissonance. I think I've been fortunate to practice outside of the traditional healthcare model for quite a while now. It's sure it would have become um, maybe unbearable to like not be able to practice how I want to practice and teach people the things I wanted to um, teach them. But yeah, basically it is. And so I guess the reason I want to see what other dietitians, if they've, um, what their transition was like, because, or what you mentioned, the cognitive dissonance there, I think there is there is that. And I wonder if there's differences in programs or like, yeah, I'm just curious. I'm not sure. Maybe some programs are heavily push the guidelines more than others. For me, when I look back, it feels like it was a tint. Like that's the best way for me to put it. Like it was tinted that way, but I wasn't like taught to, tell people to replace butter with margarine, right? Like I wasn't taught to like go to, avoid saturated fat or things like that. So.
Yeah, well said. I had learned that fat was really good for endurance athletes. Almost 13, 14 years ago now, we validated that on metabolic carts. I ended up reading The Big Fat Surprise in 2016. I got nutrition certified. So I'm a nutrition coach in 2017. And I just, you get
Excellent.
redoctrinated into the balanced diet kind of idea. Maybe this is a good contrast to show like what your practice was like before versus what it was like in the metabolic clinic, where yes, we got back to recommending that people eat lots of whole grains. You eat fruits and vegetables and get a variety of fruits and vegetables, and it's frequent meals and frequent snacks, and this is how many calories and lean proteins. And the thing that I noticed is like we would give somebody that advice and it would not work. Something was wrong with my client that could never figure it out. Every client could not figure it out. A lot of trainers I know could not figure it out even for themselves. And then I stumble upon this whole other thing, which is like low carb keto, and you try it on yourself or try it for somebody else. And it's like, this works for pretty much everybody. Like it's harder to find people that this doesn't work for at some level. I wonder if that's kind of what you experience as far as the contrast between, the clinical job that you had and then finding this whole other way of doing things. Like they're totally different in the results you were getting.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I definitely different results, especially able to work with people for longer periods of time. So in the clinical setting, you may have people there for a few weeks. Sometimes it's only a few days. And it's short periods of time. You're not really able to like teach and impact. You're doing these like little short bursts. And of course, wasn't outside of the box yet at that point. But definitely the results, and I think like you said, like it works for everyone. And why does it work for everyone? Of course, there's nuance there, right? Like different people need different strategies. Maybe they need a little more fasting or intermittent fasting, or their protein needs to be a little bit higher, lower or higher, all these different like individual adjustments. But at the core of being human, we need protein, and we know animal-based proteins are the best for us, or the best absorbed, most bioavailable. Fat, we know we need fat, right? So like an animal-based diet or a ketogenic, I know we're talking ketogenic and low carb, but at its core, I think the argument can be made that an animal-based diet, or even like if you say carnivore, right? Like animal-based proteins, animal-based fats, in terms of a macro protein and fat perspective and a micro nutrient perspective, vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients, it has everything we need. So it has everything we need. So if you can get that foundation, and this is what I was able to do at that first, metabolic health job, was get that foundation for everyone. And then of course, individualize it. So it fit with their life and their work schedule and their family meal time and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Their
Well,
preferences.
the foundation is the most important part. And like you said, like making small tweaks to intermittent fasting is vastly different than telling somebody to eat whole grains and hoping that's going to work when it's absolutely not. It's totally, totally different. And on that note, especially now with all the education you have, can you explain what it is about a ketogenic that particularly helps with the gut and everything that you experience? What is it about the carbohydrates that when they're there, there could be a component of like fermentation that's happening in the gut, probably where it should not, and what the difference between the digestion of carbohydrates and the digestion of fats and proteins, and why those are so different, and why they help you and your own condition and your own microbiome.
Definitely. Again, definitely multifactorial there. I think I first want to start with taking things out. So taking things out of someone's diet, right, that are insulting their gut, causing inflammation, damaging maybe the mucosal layer, or fueling the wrong bacteria, which sort of encompasses carbohydrates and processed foods. I'm sort of hitting both of those at once here. So processed foods, which tend to contain highly processed carbohydrates, which spike our blood sugar, push our metabolism over to, not able to burn as much fat, needing to use the glucose, right? In that, with just talking about increasing glucose levels, having tons of sugar around, we know that sugar creates more oxidative stress when we're burning more sugar versus fat, right? So there's more reactive oxygen species, which can cause that oxidative stress from sugar versus fat. So if your primary fuel source is sugar, or if you have a lot of sugar coming into your body, you're going to have a greater ratio there compared to somebody who's on a lower carbohydrate diet, higher fat diet. Basically, it's a cleaner energy source. That definitely impacts the gut, and it impacts the microbiome, because we know a lot of the bacteria that aren't so great for us, so more of the pathogenic ones, and the yeast. So there's positive yeast for us, beneficial yeast, and there's ones that are more pathogenic, and of course ones that have become more pathogenic when there's too much of them, if they overgrow and they're not in this like smaller level that they should be. They love sugar. They'll flourish with sugar. So I think when it comes to gut dysbiosis, taking out or reducing the amount of sugar coming into the diet really helps calm down inflammation, cleaner fuel source, and reduces that oxidative stress there. And then I'll shift over to if someone's on a ketogenic diet, you're also making ketones. And what I think is great about ketones, and you probably already know this, one of the main ketones, beta hydroxybutyrate, is really similar to the butyrate that's produced from fiber. So the reason why one of the reasons that high fiber diets get this great reputation as being necessary for gut health, which we know that they're not. We've seen plenty of people that do well, really well, in different indigenous populations that do really well with minimal fiber or low fiber. And of course, the microbiome adapts because it's fantastic like that. There's many different variations of what a healthy gut can look like, different proportions and populations of different species. But fiber, one of the main reasons it has a good reputation is because when bacteria ferment it, they create butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid, which is super helpful for our gut epithelial cells. So ketones sort of like bypass that, right? So the layer of gut cells there, ketones provide that energy source via beta hydroxybutyrate for gut cells. So you get that same benefit without the fiber. And then of course you have less high fiber foods coming through the diet, less, let's say, broccoli, nuts, like these high fiber foods that take a lot to digest, need a lot of fermenting. That can put a lot of stress on the gut, and it could create more gas, right? More bloating, more distension, can basically either cause constipation or diarrhea. It can also cause loose stools. It can go both ways. Some people experience one or the other. Some people actually see it go back and forth.
Wow. That was so well explained. I really appreciate that. And I don't know if you saw, I love bringing this up. I don't know if you saw the video that kind of went viral last year, hashtag fart walks, where this woman who was promoting, it's so good. This woman who wrote a book on high fiber diets and the importance of it or whatever, made this video where her and her husband go out after dinner every night and they have to walk for 15, 20 minutes, and they call it fart walks because they eat a high fiber diet. And of course you're going to have lots of flatulence, and this is a way to get it out. Oh my goodness, I don't think this is the best idea. But anyway, you'll have to pull that up. It's really, really funny. But yeah, thank you for explaining that. That was an amazing explanation. And so far, we've talked primarily about gut health and how a ketogenic diet can help that. But you eventually got into the space of metabolic psychiatry and really understanding how a ketogenic diet can really help with the brain. Can you tell us what it was like to kind of get involved in that field as well?
Sure. It was, I guess the way to put it is a next level, a next step, because a lot of the patients that I work with also need to lose weight, right? They've gained weight over the years. or they gained it quickly, or gradually, right? One or the other. And they don't know why. They also have their blood sugars increasing. You look in you look in labs, and insulin resistance is something that just seems so common. I know the estimates are really high, right? Like the most recent estimates are somewhere around the 93% that metabolic dysfunction, sorry, the estimates for metabolic dysfunction in the American population are high, around this like 93%. So it's really common to find insulin resistance when you're working with someone. And so it basically, when I say went to that next level, I'm still working with similar patients that are struggling with difficulty losing weight, difficulty with blood sugar control, and then their triglycerides are high, and their lipids are off, maybe their HDL is low, things are, their blood work is starting to be off or has been off. But they're also struggling with depression or struggling with really bad anxiety. And so a ketogenic diet will help, a low-carb ketogenic diet will help reverse these chronic conditions that are related to insulin resistance and sort of the other effects that are associated with it. But it will also, the ketones themselves have another beneficial effect for the brain, right? We know ketones are really healing for the brain. They reduce inflammation. They can increase mitochondrial biogenesis, which means you can actually make more mitochondria, which can help increase energy availability in the brain, which can really translate to, wow, if I have better working mitochondria in my brain, I can improve how my brain is functioning, improve how my mental health is, right? Improve that state. And it's just all back to the biochemistry. The human body is, everything's related, right? My arm's related to my eye, everything's connected, everything's related. And if you can improve the way mitochondria are functioning through a ketogenic diet, you can affect not only the gut and the rest of the body and lose weight and get your blood sugar under control and working more efficiently, but you can also help your brain to work more efficiently.
You made such a good point there, which I absolutely love. And it's like, you don't need separate diets for all of these different separate conditions. You eat the one diet and it improves all of it. Well, what better evidence can you need that this is a proper human diet and it can fix so many different things? You don't need to be on this special diet for your gut and this special diet for your brain and this other special diet for weight loss. Another thing that you've done in your career more recently is not only just the weight loss, but also weight gain. For some people who are experiencing anorexia, you've done some case studies along with Dr. Calabrase that I think are absolutely fascinating. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Can you tell us about some of the work that you've done with those case studies and how you were able to get that information out there?
I actually did not. So her case report, and then the pilot study that she ran with patients with anorexia, she did that before we met. So you can definitely have her back on.
I'll have her back on and talk to her about that. That's totally fine. With the way that the two of you work together is also quite interesting, because it sounds like you were getting very, very good compliance from the patients, and you were helping them be really practical about how they were putting that together. We have some people, I hear Dr. Chris Palmer sometimes say that it's really hard to execute a ketogenic diet. People are already suffering with mental disorders, and it's really hard for them to do it. And then I hear other people like Nicole Laurent say, you know what, like what they're already going through is already really, really hard. And managing this diet is easier than it is to manage what they're already managing, which is really challenging. So I'm curious, in your experience, where do you see that, and what have you experienced as far as clients being and patients being compliant with staying with the diet?
That's a great perspective, and both perspectives have truth to them. And I think there's different variables. So we wanted the what we offered to patients to really hit or cover all the different aspects that can help them become more, have better compliance, make it easier, right? Not make it be a difficult chore. And what I've observed is having support. So support at home from someone that's on board with you is huge. And then support from us, of course. We offer groups multiple times a week where you can talk to other people that are going through similar things. So like that support aspect of it, the sharing of ideas, brainstorming, what am I going to do for travel that's coming up, and the restaurant or the birthday party this weekend, like all of those little things are really helpful. But definitely when someone has someone supportive at home, And even if they live alone, it doesn't have to be someone physically at home with them. It could be them, a friend down the street, or someone else that is interested in what they're doing. They don't have to necessarily be doing it with them. It's great when family members or friends jump in and say, I'm gonna do this with you. Like, why not? There's nothing to lose. Let me see what it does for me, or let me do it with you. But just having someone that understands the diet change is huge, because a lot of people confront, the family member who brings home, their favorite ice cream flavor, or brings home pizza, or brings home foods into their house that make it really difficult. Especially if like the smell is there, right? If the smell is there and you can see it, and all of a sudden your digestion starts going, because digestion actually starts before we even have food in. It makes you hungrier, makes you want it more, right? There can be some really difficult things to navigate. So having someone on board with you, either whether they're making dietary changes with you, or they just understand and are interested in what you're doing, and then the other support pieces that we provide, I think, are what make it easier. So they don't hit a barrier and think, oh, I hit a barrier. Like, I can't do this anymore. This isn't going to work. I hit a barrier this quick. Like, I'm going to hit multiple barriers, and it just feels like this impossible thing. So that piece I think is really helpful. So they feel like they have ways to troubleshoot the little things that pop up along the way, and the big things that pop up along the way.
I love that. My experience with groups is like, yes, I, hit the books on this stuff, and I talk to experts around the world and go to the conferences, and like, yeah, I learn this stuff and I can explain things for sure, but I see more value in the other people, like you're saying, like supporting each other, and like, oh, you're traveling. Well, guess what? I went traveling 2 months ago, and these are the things that I did. This worked. This is what didn't work. This was my failure. Like, that's where the real value is. It's not necessarily me telling somebody facts or whatever. It's them hearing stories and getting that support from other people, because you're right. It can feel really isolating if you think you're the only one in your little circle that's eating this really weird way, to realize there's other people out there that are doing this, thriving on this, and have figured out a lot of the, the difficult things about it, and can offer that support is so helpful.
Really, it's huge. I think that's what makes it able to be transformative for someone and sustainable. All the little things you learn along the way, and the perspective that it doesn't feel, because you said it perfectly, and a lot of people think that way, especially at first, like, I'm eating in a weird way. That's not the exact words you used, but like, I'm eating different, I'm eating weird from other people. It feels isolating. So to sort of take that out of the equation right away is really helpful for long-term sustainability. And then they can learn along the way that a lot of people can adapt their diet over time, right? It doesn't have to be maybe as strict as they've been on it for a period of time, so they can kind of learn that lifestyle balance too.
Gotcha. Okay, and this is, we've mentioned several times, this is highly variable. I'm just asking you to kind of generalize here. This is going to be very specific to an individual,
Sure.
but in general, as a pattern, where do you see you helping the most people? Like, are you giving people meal plans and telling people what to eat on certain days and times? Is it more like you're giving them like track your foods and these are your boundaries? How do you think you're able to reach the most people the easiest way? Again, it's going to be very individual based on the person, but generally speaking, what kinds of things are you trying to get people on?
A specific meal plan as a guide. I use it as a guide with ranges, right? So ranges for protein, ranges for fat, ranges for carbs, which of course are lower, so that they feel like it's not specific, right? Like, and of course, human nutrition isn't specific. There isn't like a specific number of calories, protein grams, right? That is going to be perfect for me every day, right? So being realistic, in educating why we're aiming for these ranges. So creating this meal plan with ranges, showing them what it looks like in food, giving them examples, right, of what it looks like in food that they can swap in and out of to make it easy for them. And then also explaining the grams, right, in the ratio. When we're talking about ketogenic diets, the fat does need to be higher than the protein and the carbs. So I think that explanation and understanding helps. And then making the meal plan as easy for them to understand and be able to swap things in and out of, and not have to measure or track every little thing, in an app.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, you're so good at explaining things, and have been awesome in this episode, like giving examples and explaining complicated, principles in a way that's really easy to understand. So I'm sure your patients really appreciate that about you. Is there anything you're super looking forward to in the future? Something you're working on, or a direction you guys are going? Like, what gets you most excited about the future right now?
Just expanding, just keeping going and seeing how many people we can help, right? Just seeing how many people we can help. Nothing specific at the moment for you.
Gotcha. Well, I just always love all the connections I get to make in this space, and I found so many kind and wonderful and giving people. And I'm so glad that we sat in the same row at the Symposium for Metabolic Health in 2024 and saw you and
A lot
Dr.
of fun.
Calabrase taking notes like mad women. Oh my goodness, you're filling out notebook after notebook and asking amazing questions. I love that she got on stage and said that everybody needs a Rachel. That's like my standout phrase for the whole thing. So just really appreciate getting to know you at a little bit more depth than we did the first episode, and to hear your story and to hear you explain so many important things, I think is going to be really valuable for our audience. So thank you so very much for being on our show today. Where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Well, I hope it's valuable, and thank you so much for having me on. Instagram, so Rachel Frase RD on Instagram, and LinkedIn. Sorry, LinkedIn is my name, Rachel Frase RD.
Awesome. We will tag that in the show notes so people can follow you if they so choose. I hope to bump into you at another conference sometime soon. I know they're tricky to get to, but yeah, like I said, it's so great to make so many connections out there with some amazing people, including yourself. So thank you again so very much for the journey that you went through, and to come out on the other side and do make that transition that I think a lot of the registered dietitians don't ever end up making. I think is really valuable, and I'm so happy for you that you get to work in this space and have the job satisfaction of knowing you're helping so many people out there. And I do hope your practice continues to grow and you help more and more people out there. But for now, just thank you so very much, Rachel, for being on our show and sharing your wisdom and information with us today. We really appreciate you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Casey. Hopefully we'll see you soon at a conference.
I hope to see you soon as well. Thank you so much. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.